Hey everybody, how's everybody doing today? Welcome to my photo editing live stream where I edit your photos live. Today I'll be using DxO Photolab 7 and to edit your photos. It is my favorite editor for editing photos, and uh, I have it's like 12 or 13 images. Yeah, about 12 images, and one image was asking for a critique here from Jen. Good to see everybody. Excuse me, my goodness. Good to see everybody. I appreciate you being here and for your submitting your images for me to edit. As always, it's just my opinion how to edit these. It's very subjective. Doing the editing, I try to edit these as if I took the photos and what I would do with them before publishing them, say like on Instagram or whatever. And hopefully you pick up a few tips and also how to use DxO Photolab 7 or just editing in general. I don't use too many complicated tools. Uh, I usually just do some optical corrections, noise reduction, and crop, uh, and then local adjustments, as you'll see. So if you enjoy these streams, as always, you can buy me a cup of coffee, make a small donation. They're always greatly appreciated. With all that said, let me check the chat, see who's in, and then we'll get started. I see this side to it's cut off. My chat, I got to figure out how to do a better job on the chat. But good morning, and Roger's here, and looks like you two guys are talking. There's a quick question here. Looks like from Roger about downloading. So I've been downloading my files through OM Workspace cable from the camera with my OM1. Is it better to do it a different way with a card reader or not? It's just personal preference. I think for me, I prefer downloading from the SD card. So what I do is I always have two SD cards in my OM1 because it's dual card slot camera. And when I'm in the field, I set the camera to write the images to both cards. So I always have a backup. And then when I get home, I take one card out, I put that in the card reader, and I read those in. You can use OM Workspace to pull them into your computer. I use Adobe Bridge because I use Photolab 7, which doesn't import images directly. And then Adobe Bridge erases all the images off the card, and then I take that empty SD card out of the card reader, put that back in my camera, and then I keep going. I go out it's ready for my next photo walk. And then the second SD card that's in the camera that has all of the images, I leave those on there until the card gets almost full. I rinse and repeat that process. I never take the second SD card out, so I always have a backup of the images that I took on that second SD card in the camera. So I treat that second SD card like internal memory on the camera. It never, almost rarely comes out. And if I ever go out in the field and I forgot to put the first SD card slot back in, because how many of us done that before, right? Left the house without memory cards in the camera. It's very unlikely because I'll always have that second one in there that I never ever take out. The only consideration to think about is, do you want to put the wear and tear on the SD card slot, or do you want to put it on the little rubber flap that comes on the side of the camera? And for me, it's I'd rather put the wear and tear on the SD card slot, right? Uh, because over time, I think uh, one of them's going to wear out if you use it enough, right? But uh, I've only had an SD. Come to think, I don't think I have any cameras that have ever failed an SD card slot. But those little rubber things that you have to open and close all the time, the rubber flaps, I have seen those wear off. but since I don't use them that much, um, I haven't had really any problems with either over time. So that's just my opinion on that. When you have a dual card slot, if I have a single card slot camera, then it's kind of 50-50. It depends on the camera. Some cameras, like the LX100, typically I will read the photos off of through the USB-C port. It's slower, okay? It's always going to be slower when you read through the USB-C port into the from the camera into your computer. But the reason I do that is because a lot of times I have a Arca Swiss plate on the bottom of the camera, and I have to remove that and open the battery door to get the memory card out. So on that camera, I prefer to read it directly off the camera through the USB-C port, even though it is slower. And the battery, the USB-C port is behind a plastic cover that flips open and closed. It's not a rubber flap that you have to push. So I don't have to worry about the rubber, silicone, whatever it is, wearing out quite as much. It's just a little plastic door that opens and closes. So on those cameras, I do through the USB-C port. Like also my TG5, a lot of times I read through the USB-C port because that camera, a lot of times I also have a tiny Arca Swiss plate on there, and those things tend to block the battery door. But if it's something like my EM5, EM5 Mark III has a plastic door that opens and closes. I always use the memory card reader on the computer, et cetera, et cetera. So it just depends on the camera from when it's a single card slot. But the dual card slot cameras always have the plastic door to the memory card reader. I take one out. Uh, but the USB-C port sometimes is behind a rubber door. So that's how I do it. Okay. Let's go ahead and get to the images. That's why we're all here, right? And I think it's this button. Yes. Okay, very good. John Follows is here. Rod Meta. My goodness, Rod, it's been a long time, buddy. How you been? um, let's see. Got a little distracted there when I see a long time viewer here on the channel. It's been a long time, unless you've been coming in and not, and I haven't noticed. But I don't think I've seen you in gosh, feels like a year. Anyhow, we have looks like, oh, okay, this is a cemetery. So this is one of the nicer ones where I guess you go inside. I've never been to a gravesite inside a door, one that's closed off or gated like this. So, uh, what would I do here? I think I would, grave sites. I like to make a little darker. It feels more like it's in tune with the vibe that I get whenever I go to a grave site. Uh, so what I might have to do is crop out this area here. So I've already applied like optical corrections and noise reduction. So all I'm going to have to do is just the editing, really. Let's try normal. Okay, let's do something like that. Nah, it's a little tight. Get a little more breathing room here. Okay, and then Needs a slight correction on horizon. All right. And what we're going to do is, I think I can do this by something like this. Do the So Rod says you have a bit of the sky in for depth. I see. Okay. Mm, that's an interesting. That's not a bad idea, actually. But let me continue with this train of thought. I'm gonna increase the chroma mask, and let's just brighten that up a bit. And we're gonna increase the clear view and some micro contrast, give it some texture. I'm gonna pull back a little bit on the green. And stretch that out a bit. Maybe push the reds a tiny bit. Okay. If I push that way brighter. All right. Wow. I'm gonna just eyeball this. Go back to global exposure. Okay. And let's tighten that up a bit more. Okay. Uh, that's good. Let's do another local adjustment up in here and here. And just a little bit in here. Then one more in here. Actually, I think it's this one. Let's get rid of that. Let's make it a little smaller. And just, oops, let's warm that up just maybe a touch. Okay. Let's get rid of some of the little bright spots. And then we'll cool that off a tiny bit. Okay. I think that's what I would do with this image. So let's do a quick comparison. Go ahead and reset it. No, we're good. Still needs a slight correction on the verticals. Let me just do it this way. All right, that feels better. I'm very sensitive to verticals because it's what I do. All right, there's the before and after. So it's a little bright here. Dang it. Let me just select that particular control point. And just back it off a tiny bit. And so yeah, I think what Rod was saying about the depth, this is this interesting idea because definitely this does add some depth to the image the way he framed it. But I just want to focus on the subject. I always like to fill the frame, so that's kind of my editing style, is to fill the frame as much as I can with the subject. For scenes like this, if I want depth, I prefer much wider scenes. Wider landscapes, wider streetscapes or seascapes. That's when I like to have a little more depth. But scenes like this that are a little bit tight, I prefer to zoom in on the subject. So there's the before. Oops, sorry, my microphone was off. There's some nice blues in here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do a wide crop. We'll just do 16. No, let's do a full 16 by 7. Let's try and separate this a bit. Like so. Just tilt it slightly. And have a little bit of wide angle distortion here, but that's okay. Uh, it does bother me a little bit. I'm going to come into about here. Just put that person in the center. Okay. And let's see if we can bring out the sky. I'm going to push the blues. That off a tiny bit. You see, off. What I might have to do is bring this up. Okay, I'm going to just punch in to these blue areas, just kind of individually. Oops. I'll make a new point. All right, here and here and here. Maybe a touch there. Okay. Okay, we'll do that. And then the water, I always like to just bring out as much of that as I can with a little tighter Luma mask. All right, good. And let's do just a little bit on the landscape. So I need to pull the exposure down to see. It's a little bit of light here, a little bit here. Okay. A little bit here. So there's really only about 3 or 4 spots of light. So I like to pull the exposure down to see where the light is. And then just sort of amplify that a little bit. Excuse me. Seriously, I just woke up like 30 minutes ago, so I'm kind of going through the morning ritual, just clearing everything out. Uh, Best way to do this, increase the lumen mask a tiny bit. Okay. All right, and then one final one on this person. Okay, I think I'll call it there. Uh, okay, so this gives you an overview of the crop. Again, there's a lot of empty or negative space up here. Uh, I just cut all that out. And then as far as the crop overall, I always look for my corners. So on this corner, you can see there's a line here, and I tried to balance it so it didn't feel too heavy on one side or the other. Uh, so what I did is I used the guy here to center the image, and that was kind of the point where I balanced it. So if we look at it like this, so there's the before. So he's a little bit off center here, and there's no line going into the frame. Versus on this one, you can see from this corner, there's a line going into the frame. You have this guy kind of anchoring it in the center. And then I just kind of brought out some of the blue that I found in the sky and darkened the water to make it look more reflective. Uh, but yeah, that kind of sums up how I would edit this picture. I would probably spend a little more time with the clouds here to make them glisten a little bit. I always like clouds that are kind of glistening. When I have some texture, I would do that with a local adjustment, something like this, where I just throw in some micro contrast. Um, yeah, that's a little better. Something like that. And that's my final edit there. Okay, thank you, Garrett. Let's see what we have here. Um, I have a night scene, long exposure. This looks like it's about a 2 or 3 minute exposure. Oh, 15 seconds. Okay, 15-second exposure. So it's a very calm night. Whenever I see water glassy like this, either the water is really still, if it's 15 seconds, or it was a very long exposure, like a few minutes. Okay, so I might want to try and bring out stars if there are any up in here, and then just punch in the light onto the center here and get rid of this. Looks like it's probably a water fountain that's not turned on, maybe. And that'll be it. So I'm gonna do just a quick, let's see if we can get an auto horizon correction. Nah, not really. But it does need a slight tilt this way. Okay. And just see what's in the scene. It's really only this one star. So there's not much going on in the sky. So I want to get rid of this. The composition overall, though, is pretty nice. Maybe just a 16:9 crop. Now we're kind of losing the water a little bit. So I like the reflection in the water. I don't want to lose that. So we do, that's an interesting way. Go back to a 4:3. I don't know, I'm struggling a bit with how to compose this. That's not bad there. It's a little off center. It's a little heavy on the right side. Wow, this is harder than I thought it'd be. Uh, all right, let's go with that. Okay. Um, okay, so there's some warm light hitting in here. I guess that might be from this. Or no, there's another light over here on the left that we're not seeing. So let's um let's pull this out a little bit. Increase the lumen mass. Okay. Okay, I think that works. Maybe give it just a tiny bit of warmth. Okay, and then let me work on this water. Why didn't that create a new point? Plus, there we go. I'll just drop her down in here. Just make that nice and glossy. Uh, let's pull off some of this brightness over in here. Then see if I can increase the color in there. Okay. And this structure needs some contrast, maybe a clear view right there. All right, let me just see where I'm at. Uh, I'm debating in my head about this right side of this structure. I feel like I need to gonna just push the magenta a tiny bit. Just to give the illusion that the sort of the magenta is coming off of this fountain are reflecting onto the building a little bit more. Just a tiny bit here and there. Okay. It's a little strong. I'm gonna pull it back a tiny bit. All right, I'm gonna call it there. So composition is really good. The only thing bothered me was this, and this area over here is a little bit too bright. I tried to temper this lighting around the structure itself, but I couldn't. So uh, yeah, and then just what I usually do with the water, just try to make it a little glossy. And the only really change is that thing I did at the end here with the this temple or whatever this is, gazebo. I just tried to add a little bit of this purple reflection onto the right side. If the sky had any stars in it, I would try to bring those out, but I just didn't see any. So we're gonna leave that as is. So again, there's the before and after, and of course, just brighten the structure up. But I think there's before, because you can see just a little bit of a hint of purple on this side, and then there's the after. So I just tried to accentuate that. I'm always trying to accentuate whatever natural lighting is in the scene, either making it more contrasty or improving the, saturating the color a little bit from that light whenever it's a dark scene. So Rod says this side is a little too strong. That's true. It is brighter from here. I, I I tend to agree. So that's easy enough, right? Because I think I used this control point. I can just bring it down a bit. Uh, even a little more. Okay, so that's bringing it down a bit. Yeah, I think that looks better too. Uh, okay, let's move on to the next one. Let's see, we have an underwater scene, and underwater. Wow, this is really bright up here. If I do an auto thing, no. I feel like not that you can really do horizon corrections in water, but I'm gonna try and this is interesting to me, but it's blurry. So we're gonna minimize that. Hmm, something like that. And this really bright spot here, not sure. Not sure how I want to go. I might just pull it in a tad, then come down in here. Just add a little bit. Okay. Uh, far as colors go, wow, that looks terrible. Just make a slight adjustment. And then we'll just, excuse me, just highlight some of the yellow fish. And then these blue fish we'll do individually, because their color is a little bit too similar to the rest of the scene. So I'm just going to kind of pick the ones away from the water. Okay. It's good. Then I'm going to pull the blacks in. Here. All right. So the color is just a little bit. Let's extend this orange a bit. See exactly what color this blue is. Okay. So what I'm going to do is tighten this up a bit. So what I did is I dropped the eyedropper on the fish here, and you can see I got kind of this darker blue. And then when I put it up here, you can see I got sort of these lighter blues. So when I clicked on the fish, I tried to tighten this up a bit so it doesn't bleed into here, because I don't want to saturate this side too much. So what I might need to do is actually do just a minor desaturation here. Like that. Okay. I'm going to call it there. So there's the before and after. We have standard 4x3, and then here's 16x9. Just feels like it fits this scene a little better. So if I do it, there's the before, and there's the after. And essentially, I just tried to accentuate the fish a little more, and the reds and the yellows. I didn't do anything up here because it's completely clipped, other than to try to bring the contrast in a little bit there. And what I'm seeing in here is not noise. It looks like just the water is a little bit dirty. like with debris and stuff. So I didn't, I don't think noise reduction would help much with that. I think that's actually what the water looks like. Okay, but I think that looks pretty good. Um, let's see, we have, oh, this another one from Coolidge. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this scene, I'm going to copy, I'm just doing Control C or Control Shift C, and I'm going to apply the same, I'm just applying what I did on the last image to this image, because it's pretty much identical. All I have to do is fix my control points. Like I probably don't need this one, so we'll trash that one. And yeah, these were highlights on the fish. I like this one. And then this control point. Yeah, that's fine. Maybe, yeah, maybe put that one over there. And then all we have to do is just work on some of the individual colors. Just pull this, and then on the blues, push the luminance. Okay. Increase that. Back to the oranges. Let's expand this out a bit. These are a little bit, okay. This one I'm going to export out. I'm going to export this one and see. Let me see. Do I have I'm going to export this one and see how it looks. Oh, I didn't even check the composition. Hold on. The crop is very similar. I think I would rather crop it about like that. No. Yeah, I think this image I would just do a normal crop. So let me export that. All right. So I'm going to reset. So this is the after image on the left. This is the before on the right. So again, it's just about bringing out the contrast and colors with the underwater stuff. So if I do it this way, that's the edit. That's the before image. I wonder if I can do this full screen. Yeah. I think that looks pretty good. Gosh, I haven't been snorkeling in years and years. Wow, it's probably been 30 years since the last time I've been in the ocean. Come to think of it, 2005? So almost 20 years since I've been in the ocean. Whew, brings back some memories, man. I got some stories about the ocean. Okay. I think this one is a critique only from Yan, so it's already been edited to some extent. And I like it. Typically with seascapes, you know, my preference is and again, it's all subjective, right? But my preference usually on seascapes is if there's well, this is not really a seascape. This is more of like a picture of a subject. So in this case, I would have cropped in a lot tighter so that this didn't show over here. And yeah, it's a little bit too dark all the way around the subject here. So I would have probably, for an edit, I would have probably brought the water up a little more in the ground and brighten the sky. And for a crop, I would do probably a vertical, something more like this. And then just added some contrast. So I'd have probably framed and edit the image more like this, rather than you know, this landscape mode. I would have done a portrait mode because you're close enough that you can get a decent shot this way and a little bit of horizon correction. I think that's what I would have done. Of course, I could spend a lot more time editing, but that you just want a little bit of a critique. That's the main thing is just the crop. I would have probably done a vertical. And let me see what camera lens combo. So EM10 Mark III with a 75 to 300, you're at 300 millimeters. So you're pretty much, yeah, you can't get any closer, right? So I think I would have done a vertical, then cropped in post, and did something like that. But very, very nice picture. It's a great subject, good color contrast with the reds and the blue, and then just a little bit of browns in here. But yeah, okay. Let's go to the next one. All right, this one is a relatively monochromatic image. If I recall, John, you're here, right? You much prefer color images than black and white. Correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, but if I recall, you prefer color. Uh, so I'm going to try and stick to that, but I'd probably go black and white normally with an image like this. But I'm going to try and stay in the color zone. This looks like a scene that's like on one of your regular photo walks. I don't know why, but this fence line looks familiar to me. Not this tree necessarily, but the fence line. Okay, let's do a vertical crop because I don't like this right side. So I'm going to focus just on the tree. We might have to do a 4x3 or even a square. Yeah, we can get away with a square crop. Wow, the tree is leaning a little bit to the left. So must be more sun coming in on that side. And what I'm going to do is try and separate this tree from the background. And that's going to be tough, right? Because there's branches everywhere. But I might just be able to do it. Let me just see where I just increased the luma mask just a tiny bit. Okay. Do that. I'm going to try and shift the white balance on it a little warmer. Ooh, it's bleeding a bit into the sides here. I wonder if I can erase a little bit. I don't do this very often. Mm, okay. All right. We're almost there. All right. That's not too bad. Increase that. Pull this back. Maybe a slight horizon here. Okay. And then something is, let me look at my mask here. I might need to do is just kind of come in here. Tighten up the luminosity masking. Oops. I'm losing something here. Something is just a little bit off on this tree. Okay. That's a little better. And then just increase this. Cool that off. Okay. Let's add a vignette. Maybe not that much, just a little bit less than that. Okay. Composition. Just need this to be tighter. A little tighter if I can. And then one more local spot right here. Maybe not. So if I just look at it in black and white again, yeah, it's not going to work. So I think if I wanted this to be in color, this is where I would probably land on it. Just a tighter crop and a little bit darker. I think that's all I would do. So if we kind of look at this more full screen, so there's the before image. Just not bad. And there's the after, which is essentially just a little bit of a crop. What's interesting is when I look at this full screen, I can see pigeons or something in the tree in different places. But that's what I would do with this image. Okay. That was a tough one, John. I really struggled there, trying to make a difference. But I I don't think I don't think it needed much as it is. It just needed a little bit more separation between the tree and the background, and then a square crop. Okay. Um, let's see. Any discount codes? Let me just look at the chat. Hey, Paul, how are you? Good to see you. And the problem is, tree is isolated and no contrast. Yeah, a little bit. I'm just reading the chats here. Um, joining the replay clue. That's funny. And thanks for your work on my fish pics. Oh, sure, Paul, no problem. And there was a question. Oh, discount codes. Uh, we're in September now, so the we're really close to Black Friday and stuff. So I think if you can wait, download like maybe the 30-day free trial. Okay, but wait till late October, uh, closer to November. You know, usually early November is when we start to see sort of the Black Friday discounts. It- So for now, just download like the 30-day free trial. Of course, I have my link down below for that, but download it again before you buy it. So I get the cookie or the tracking code right, so I'll get credit. But I would wait till closer to late October, November. You know how Black Friday gets pushed earlier and earlier every year, right? So everybody's trying to one up each other. They start their sales sooner than later. So I would start looking in late October, early November for some discounts. And I may get some exclusive discounts, uh, but they're never going to beat the Black Friday discounts, okay, that you see like late October, early November. So that's what I would do for DxO. Okay, let's go to the next image. And we have, what am I doing on time here? About an hour. Okay, not doing too bad. I can probably finish these next ones up pretty quick. Not that I'm rushing them, it's just these are pretty straightforward. We have a nice landscape. So I'm just gonna first just do a push here and see where we are with some details. So I probably won't need to do too much in here. Let's just warm it up a bit. That might be too warm, but not really. That's not bad. Let's back off the. In fact, I think what I'll do is I'll do it. I kind of like this haziness. So what I'm going to do is I'm only going to do this clear view higher up in the scene. Maybe pull the highlights a bit, add some contrast like that. And then we'll make another control line down here. And what I want to do here is pull the micro contrast in, make it a little bit softer. And we'll make it a little brighter this way. Okay. And composition is okay. Let me think about this for a second. Because the tree line is 2/3 into the frame here, and the sky doesn't do anything up here. And then this dirt down here, the field, is not that interesting either. So I'm going to look at maybe just balancing a little bit here. Okay. Remove that. No. Let me look at a monochrome. Over there. That. All right. I think that's all I can do here. Um, so let me go to full screen. So here's the before. I think, yeah. And then here's the after. I preferred showing it this way. So here's a side by side, right? Very cool. In terms of color temperature, thinking I should have probably kept it a little cooler on the control line here. So where is that? It's this one, right? Just a hair more. I'll push this up. Okay. So let's see how that looks. All right, that's better. Um, yeah, the reason I cropped it because there's not much going on up here. And negative space, typically I like to use it with a single subject or a very small subject in the scene, but this is a landscape, so the negative space generally doesn't work for me visually. Uh, so if we do a before and after here, so here's the before. It's a really nice scene. I think it's just essentially a crop and a little bit of a white balance adjustment, and that would make it work for me better. Again, not as much field, not as much sky, and just focus in on the trees and the homes or barns that are here in the center. I think works. But these images, these have two very different moods, don't they? This is a much cooler, serene feel. Feels like it's going into evening, and this feels a little bit like it's going into morning. But I think that's where I would end up ultimately. Okay, let's go to the next one. Huh. He said it was early morning. So this I think the way I edit this, uh I think this looks more like early morning than the other one. Because the other one looked like it was going into the evening. But okay, thanks. All right, let's see. We have landscape. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. I think the composition is good. We just have to accentuate some of the lighting in the foreground and bring out the, just adjust the white balance and shift it and bring out the sky up here. So let's do this. And we're going to push the luminosity mask a bit tighter. And let's see, if we just brighten it. Why isn't that brightening? Am I pushing? Oh, I was pushing the wrong slider. Here it is. Just brighten that. A little bit of a push on the shadows. Let's just move this dropper around until it looks about right. That looks about right. A little bit of clear view. Okay. All right, and then let's do another control line. Kind of this way. Push the luminosity mask a bit. And definitely this needs to be warmer. Okay. So do that. Pull this in a tiny bit. Wow, that sky is really blue. Let me pull in a second one. Yeah, let's make a new one. Like this. So move the dropper in here. Tighten up the chroma mask. And I'm going to shift this. Whoops, that's too much. Just a hair. Okay. Go back to this one. Okay, it's getting a little bit too gritty. What are we? ISO 8000. Okay, that's what I need to do next. Um, okay. Just wish this wasn't such a strong blue. And this one needs to be... I'm sure I got this color right. Okay, I'm getting there. Okay, I'm going to export this. Let me make some adjustments on the deep prime, maybe. Because man, you got a lot of stars in here. All right, let me export this. Okay. I'm just checking the sky a little bit here. Oh, okay. So what I might do, let's there and there. Okay. I'm going to increase that a little bit. All right, let me try this. It's very subtle. I mean, to the point that you might not even be able to tell the difference on the stream. But I'm gonna do this. Let's reset it. And all right, so there's the original here on the right side. This is my edit on the left. Uh, actually, I could use a little more light in here. So let me do one more local adjustment. I put some light in here. This could use a little bit too. All right, now I'm not. All right, now I'm gonna call it there. Okay. So let's go ahead and reset. And all right, so that's my final edit. Yeah, just bring in the foreground more contrast in the sky with the colors, and that's it. Composition wise is fine. It has a really nice balance with this tent versus this mountain over here. And then I like the people anchoring in the center. And of course, the story of just, the overall story of enjoying the evening, looking at the sky. So that's a beautiful picture. Wish I was there. Okay. So if I do this full screen, that's the after. There's the before. Looks good. Okay, let's do the next one. And okay. Just basically, composition wise, maybe a little bit tighter. And just come up this way. I get the reflection. That doesn't look right either. I think we can just do this. We can just leave this part of the reflection out. Just use this side and bring the highlights in just a tiny bit. Pull the blacks. And just work with the water. Pull that off. Let's fix some of the highlights here. Some of the highlights up in here. And this little tree right here is interesting. I wonder if I can push this out a little bit. It's not working out too well. It's just too similar a color. Maybe we'll just shift it a tiny bit, one way or the other. That's not coming out great. Okay, a little bit too much gritty. What are we like? Oh, F8. Thought it was a little bit gritty. So what I'm going to do on these rocks, I just need to soften these rocks up a little bit. So a little more separation. And I missed a highlight back here. And these rocks, I can probably just push them a couple of degrees that way. And then let me go in here. Something is just a little bit off in here. Okay, maybe it'll look better if I export it. All right. I really need this side just to be a little darker. Okay. Let's do some soft focus. Just a touch. And a slight tilt this way. Okay. No. Thinking right in here. Just want that to be darker. And this. Be a better way. Be just to. All right, I'm gonna call it there. So I think it's just the image just feels a little bit overexposed here on the left. So I just brought the exposure down, and I tried to be a little bit more selective where I brought the exposure down. But overall, it's it looks like it's about 1 or 2 stops overexposed. So I just had to bring it down. I wasn't able to accentuate this tree, but if I were if I was going to take this picture again, I would probably try to accentuate this tree somehow. Maybe just do a whole separate picture for that. But there's the before without any cropping, and it, like I said, it just feels like it's at least a stop overexposed. And there's the after, and that's really all it needed, was just a basically just darken the image. And again, I tried to be selective about it. Okay, let's go to the next one. And have a moth here. So actually, let me just do a square crop. We'll just come in like that. See if we can bring out a little bit more detail. Let me just eyeball it here. Okay, that's going to work. But we'll just sharpen it that way. And then let's do that. Definitely a stronger chroma mask. Add a little bit of contrast. Some clear view. Pull the highlights a little. And then we'll push it here. And a slight vignette right in there. Okay, let me export this. Okay, let's reset it and do a quick comparison with. So you can see I did a really tight crop into the center. This is the edited image here on the left. And if we punch in, there's a tiny bit of motion blur here. It looks like, let me check the shutter speed. 1/160th, yeah. So I'm sure this is a little bit of motion blur in the image here. Uh, but I think DxO did a good job bringing out the details in this moth. And then, of course, all I did was increase the contrast a little bit. And that's all it needed, really. So if I just do that, there's the after, and there's the before. So just a heavy crop and contrast. All right, last one here. The heck is that? Another moth. Those moths are crazy, aren't they? I always think of Godzilla movies, Mothra. Whenever I see like these moths, especially this one, this looks like Mothra from the Godzilla movie. But okay, so there's a little bit of a flower here somewhere next to a column, it looks like, with this moth. And either it's a flash or it looks like a flash because the moth is frozen. If this was artificial lighting, let me see the 1, 2, yeah, so you definitely use the flash here. Uh, so what we got to do is make it look a little bit less like a flash and more natural. Give some separation. Okay, so all right. I'm going to just tight crop it again. Like so. Give it a little smart lighting, push the shadows. Wait. Let's go into the eye. Whoops. The heck. I wanted to go here. Oh, this is a JPEG or is this a TIFF? What is this? It's a TIFF file. I was going to say, where's my white balance control? I'm going to warm it up a tiny bit. Let's do a 3x2. Okay, it's a tough call. Uh, see if we can get any color out of this. Okay. Wow. 60 macro. My goodness, this lens is so sharp. I don't know if I really need. Maybe just a tiny bit more here. And then let's let me just get rid of some of this shine. Okay. Okay, and then I need this to be a very, very tight chroma mask. Sorry, luma mask. This is taking more work than I thought because I'm doing. I might be just overthinking it, but why didn't that do anything? That should do something. Okay. Hold on. See if I can get rid of this. Yeah, this right here. So pick this down here. Okay. All right, I think I'll call it there. Uh, just the one eye is a little bit too much. Okay. So there's the before here on the left. Here's the after. This lens is so sharp I could really crop in really nice and tight and still get a nice so if I so yeah, there's the before. There's the after. And if I crop in, there's really nice detail in here. I got rid of a little bit of the shine here on the telltale giveaways of flash photography are, of course, the harsher shadows and the harsh reflections. So I was able to get rid of the reflections over here, as you can see, like this one, and you can see it all up in here. And then these shadows are pretty harsh in here. So I tried to minimize these a little bit by darkening everything else, but I think that works. Not my best edit ever of a bug, but hopefully that's a little better than the original, I think. Okay. Uh that was the last one, I believe. So let me go into the chat section, see how you guys are doing. How's everybody doing? Roger says the moth photo is very nice. It's a hummingbird moth. Oh, okay. So that's what Mothra is. Hummingbird hawk moth. Wow. You guys really know your bugs. And what if you go black and white and bring up that TED extensively to highlight the shape? I don't remember what image we were on. And the Laowa is, yeah, I figured it was a manual, like an adapted lens, because I didn't see any EXIF data on it. I'll have to do a video on how to add EXIF data. I have a really pretty effective method of doing it. So it's nothing new, right? There's a there's a app out there that's called Lens something, but it's not straightforward. It's not like just plug and play. You have to be a little bit savvy at, you know, manipulating file settings and using the app and working with folders, but it works. And then Rod says, interesting problem is that exporting changes colors. Yeah, you have to a lot of times because it depends on your working color space, right? So let me try and demonstrate, and it may not show quite as much here, but to mitigate that issue, right? What you can do in Photolab, and I'm sure other editors have this, but on Photolab, you go down here and you do soft proofing and you work in the color profile that you're going to export to. So if you notice, if I turn this off, there's almost no difference on this. But you can work in the color space that you're going to be exporting to, because you always export in sRGB. But if I turn this off, I'm actually working in, I forget what it's called, DCS profile or I'm working in a much wider color profile than I am. Like I'm working in the DxO wide gamut. profile. But if I click on this, I'm still working on the wide gamut profile, but I'm only seeing the sRGB on my screen. So when I export it, it should be the same. And then you can also use these gamut warnings up here. This image is not a particularly good example. Let me try a different one. Yeah, there's no gamut warnings coming up on this one. But you get the idea that, yeah, so that's one way to mitigate that difference that you might see between editing and exporting. Uh, on top of that, if you do any noise reduction, a lot of times the noise reduction will eliminate some of the false colors that are coming in through the higher ISO images. So that's going to give a perceived change in the colors of the scene. And ideally, it's going to be more accurate when it's exported. But it's a tricky thing when you're dealing with higher ISO images with a lot of noise and you're getting color shift because of the noise. Other than that, really what you see on your monitor should be what you get when you export. If you're working, if you're doing soft proofing, if there's still a big difference between the two, there's something else going on that I don't think I've run across. I don't think I've run across a problem, but it's going to be a color profile issue. Whether your monitor is not calibrated to the same profile that your software is, because the software can be calibrated. The editing software, you can tell it, I'm working in the monitor color profile, or I'm working in, the ProPhoto RGB profile. So there's, you get into color management between your computer, your monitor, and your software. And that's a lot more complicated subject. But those are the things you need to look for if you're seeing stark differences between your editing and your output. Okay. I'm not sure if you guys were looking at the screen or not. Uh, okay. And Rod says, yes, I agree with the noise reduction thing. Is usually submitting Adobe RGB. Problem is, you never know what the client is looking at. Yeah, I have to make the assumption they're using sRGB. Because if it's a client, they're usually doing it, well, in my case, they're usually doing it to publish online, and everything online is sRGB. So any images that I take for a client get published online. If it's getting published online, I work in sRGB color space, and I certainly export in sRGB. If the client knows what they're doing, they probably wouldn't hire me anyway. But uh, yeah, I can't imagine a client that is familiar with working with color spaces and everything would hire somebody unless we're talking about very, very high-end type photography. But for jobbers like me that do these, sub $1,000 jobs, most of my clients are not going to understand the difference between sRGB, Adobe RGB, what color profiles are, color management, all of that. Okay, I guess that's it. So, you guys, thanks so much for submitting those images. I will be back on Sunday for the normal photo chat, and I got to think of a topic for this weekend. Maybe send me some chats, or not chats, but comments or email what I should talk about this weekend. Uh, and then next week I'll do my shopping, and I have a couple of videos I'm trying to crank out, but I don't know. I'm gonna try and do them today, but I've just been so tired lately. As you can see, in the last few chats I've done, I've been unusually fatigued for no reason at all. But thanks again. We'll see you guys again soon.